What if there was a country so strict that chewing gum could land you in legal trouble, yet so wild that it hosts some of Asia's most exclusive nightclubs? Welcome to Singapore, a place locals joke about being the most sinful country on earth. Not because people break rules, but because the rules themselves seem designed to make everything fun feel forbidden. This tiny island nation has turned social control into an art form, where a simple act like crossing the street at the wrong time could cost you a month's salary. Yet millions flock here annually, drawn by its gleaming towers, incredible food, and surprisingly vibrant underground scene. From $1,000 jaywalking tickets to death penalties for drug possession, Singapore operates on a simple philosophy: follow the rules and paradise awaits. Break them, and the consequences might shock you. Today, we're counting down the 15 most mind-bending aspects of life in this perfectly ordered yet surprisingly rebellious city-state. Fact number 15. The city that bans chewing gum. Singapore's chewing gum ban isn't just unusual, it's legendary. Since 1992, importing, selling, or even possessing chewing gum for commercial purposes can result in hefty fines and jail time. The story begins in the 1980s when discarded gum was causing chaos on the brand new mass rapid transit system. Passengers would stick gum on train doors, causing delays that cost millions in lost productivity. The government's solution wasn't subtle: ban the entire product nationwide. But here's where it gets interesting. The ban isn't absolute. Therapeutic gums prescribed by doctors or dentists are allowed, creating a black market of sorts where people actually smuggle bubble gum across the Malaysian border. Customs officers have confiscated everything from innocent tourists tried in packs to elaborate smuggling operations involving thousands of pieces hidden in car tires. Walk through any neighboring country, and convenience stores overflow with colorful gum displays. Cross into Singapore, and those same shelves sit empty, replaced by breath mints and dental care products. The psychological effect is immediate. Something as innocent as a piece of Hubba Bubba suddenly feels rebellious. Locals have adapted with humor, often joking that they've forgotten how to blow bubbles. Yet the policy worked. Singapore's trains run with Swiss precision, and the streets remain spotless. What started as a practical solution became a symbol of how far this nation will go to maintain order. Fact number 14. Jaywalking could cost you $1,000. Crossing the street might seem like the most basic human freedom, but in Singapore, it's a carefully regulated activity that could drain your bank account. Jaywalking fines start at $200 for first-time offenders and can escalate to $1,000 for repeat violations. But the real shock comes from how strictly this gets enforced. Even crossing an empty street at 3 a.m. can result in a ticket if caught on surveillance cameras. The definition of jaywalking here extends beyond common sense. Crossing within 50 meters of a designated crossing point counts as an offense, even if the traffic light is broken or the designated crossing requires a 5-minute detour. Elderly residents have been fined for slowly crossing quiet neighborhood streets, while tourists often receive their first taste of Singaporean law enforcement through unexpected jaywalking citations delivered to their host days later. Local pedestrians have developed almost choreographed walking patterns, clustering at crossing points even when no cars are visible for blocks. The sight of dozens of people waiting patiently at a red light with completely empty roads creates an almost surreal urban ballet. Some intersections have installed countdown timers showing exactly how long pedestrians must wait, turning street crossing into a precisely timed activity. The enforcement uses a combination of traffic police, hidden cameras, and civilian reports. What makes this particularly fascinating is how it shaped pedestrian psychology. Even when visiting other countries, Singaporeans often maintain these hyper-cautious crossing habits, creating informal cultural ambassadors for traffic safety worldwide. Fact number 13. The secret life of nightclubs. Behind Singapore's orderly daytime facade pulses one of Asia's most sophisticated nightlife scenes, creating a fascinating contradiction between strict social control and hedonistic excess. The same government that bans chewing gum operates some of the world's most exclusive entertainment districts, where bottle service can cost more than most people's monthly rent. Clark Key transforms at the sunset from a tourist dining area into a neon-soaked playground where international DJs perform for crowds spending thousands on champagne. The irony is palpable. A country that fines you for littering simultaneously encourages you to spend your savings on overpriced cocktails in government-approved venues. These establishments operate under incredibly strict licensing requirements, with security cameras monitoring everything from entry procedures to bathroom activities. The most fascinating aspect is how these venues navigate Singapore's conservative social values. Many clubs employ elaborate membership systems and guest lists, requirements that essentially function as social screening mechanisms. What appears to be exclusivity actually serves as regulatory compliance, keeping out potentially troublesome customers while maintaining the upscale atmosphere authorities prefer. Local party culture has adapted to these constraints in creative ways. Pre-drinking at home has become an art form since alcohol prices in clubs can reach astronomical levels. Underground house parties operate in a legal gray area, moving locations frequently and relying on word-of-mouth invitations. The result is a nightlife scene that's simultaneously more expensive and more exclusive than neighboring countries, yet somehow more controlled and safer. It's capitalism and authoritarianism dancing together under strobe lights. Fact number 12. The cleanest streets money can find Singapore's reputation for cleanliness is unaccidental. It's engineered through a comprehensive system of fines that would make parking meter enforcement look lenient. Littering penalties start at $300 for small items like cigarette butts or candy wrappers, but escalate quickly based on size, location, and frequency. The enforcement mechanism reads like science fiction. Thousands of surveillance cameras equipped with motion detection can identify littering incidents and automatically generate fines. Plainclothes officers patrol popular areas, and the government even encouraged citizen reporting through mobile apps that reward informants with cash payments. Some apartment complexes have hired private investigators to catch residents who throw items from their windows. But here's what makes this system truly remarkable. It works almost too well. Streets are so clean that dropping anything feels psychologically impossible. Trash bins are strategically placed every few meters, yet remain mostly empty because people have internalized the fear of fines. Cleaning crews still patrol regularly, but they mainly polish already spotless surfaces rather than collect significant debris. The psychological impact extends beyond behavior modification. Tourists often comment on feeling guilty about creating any mess, even legally. Local children grow up with an almost obsessive relationship with proper disposal, creating generational behavior changes that go far beyond the threat of punishment. Singapore didn't just clean its streets, it rewired how an entire population thinks about public spaces. Fact number 11. Spitting, smoking, and the cane. Singapore's approach to minor social infractions escalates quickly from annoying to terrifying. Spitting in public carries fines up to $1,000, but the real deterrent lies in potential escalation. Repeat offenders or those who show disrespect to enforcement officers can face judicial caning, a punishment that leaves permanent scars and has made grown men faint during sentencing hearings. Smoking restrictions create a maze of legal and illegal zones that change throughout the day. Light up in a covered bus stop, and you're facing a $200 fine. Smoke near a building entrance, playground, or within 5 meters of a bus stop, even outdoor ones, and penalties multiply. The enforcement is so thorough that some smokers carry measuring tapes to ensure they stand in the legal distance from prohibited areas. Vandalism penalties venture into truly shocking territory. The famous case of American teenager Michael Fay, who received 4 cane strokes for spray painting cars, wasn't an aberration. It's standard procedure. Even minor graffiti or etching your name into a tree can result in both fines and corporal punishment. The psychological deterrent effect is so strong that hardware stores require identification to purchase spray paint, and art supply shops maintain detailed records of aerosol paint sales. What's fascinating is how these harsh penalties have created unexpected social dynamics. Public spaces remain pristine not just from fear, but from genuine social pressure. Spitting, smoking inappropriately, or vandalizing property becomes not just illegal but socially unthinkable. The threat of physical punishment has evolved into cultural transformation, where the behavior modification outlasts the need for enforcement in most situations. Fact number 10. The Lion City of Surveillance. Singapore operates one of the world's most comprehensive surveillance networks, with an estimated 90,000 CCTV cameras monitoring a population of 5.9 million. People, roughly one camera for every 65 residents. These aren't passive recording devices. They're equipped with facial recognition technology, behavioral analysis algorithms, and automatic alert systems that can identify everything from unusual crowd gatherings to individual jaywalking incidents. The system extends far beyond street corners. Shopping malls, office buildings, public transportation, and even void decks of residential buildings maintain constant surveillance. What makes this particularly sophisticated is the integration. Cameras share data across networks, allowing authorities to track individuals' movements throughout the entire city-state in real time. The technology can identify when someone drops litter, predict potential crowd control issues, and even flag suspicious loitering behavior. Privacy advocates might recoil, but many Singaporeans express genuine appreciation for the safety it provides. Crime rates remain among the world's lowest, and parents feel comfortable letting children travel independently on public transportation. The surveillance network has solved numerous crimes within hours rather than days, from petty theft to more serious offenses. However, the psychological impact is unmistakable. Public behavior becomes performative when everyone knows they're being watched. Conversations in public spaces tend to be more guarded, spontaneous activities decrease, and there's a constant awareness of being observed. Some residents report feeling anxious when traveling to countries with less surveillance, having become accustomed to the feeling of constant security. The city has essentially traded privacy for safety, and most seem content with the bargain. Fact number 9. Death penalty for drugs. Singapore's zero-tolerance drug policy represents one of the world's harshest approaches to narcotics control, with mandatory death sentences for trafficking amounts that other countries might treat as personal use violations. Carry 500 grams of cannabis or 15 grams of heroin, and execution becomes automatic. No judicial discretion, no plea bargaining, no exceptions for first-time offenders or foreign nationals. The enforcement begins at Changi Airport, where every arriving passenger faces potential inspection. Drug detection dogs, random searches, and sophisticated scanning equipment create multiple layers of screening. Signs throughout the airport clearly warn that drug trafficking carries the death penalty. Yet several people annually still attempt to smuggle narcotics through what has become one of the world's most secure borders. What makes this policy particularly striking is its consistency across all demographics. Wealthy expatriates, diplomatic personnel, and citizens of powerful nations receive identical treatment. The case of British author Alan Shadrake, imprisoned for writing critically about Singapore's death penalty policies, demonstrates how seriously authorities take any challenges to these laws. Even discussing drug policy reform publicly can result in legal consequences. The deterrent effect appears genuine. Singapore has among the world's lowest drug usage rates, and the island serves as a drug-free transit hub in a region where narcotics trafficking remains common. However, the policy creates constant tension with international human rights organizations and occasionally strains diplomatic relationships when foreign nationals face execution. The government's position remains unwavering. Harsh penalties prevent the social devastation that drug addiction causes in other societies. Whether this approach could work elsewhere remains hotly debated. Fact number 8. Underground casinos and legal temptation. Singapore's relationship with gambling perfectly illustrates its pragmatic approach to vice: strictly control what you can and eliminate, and profit from what you can regulate. The government operates 2 massive casino resorts, Marina Bay Sands and Resorts World Sentosa, that generate billions in revenue while simultaneously maintaining some of the world's strictest gambling regulations for locals. Citizens and permanent residents must pay a $100 entry fee for each 24-hour period they wish to gamble, or purchase an annual membership for $2,000. Family members can place relatives on exclusion lists, banning them from entering casinos entirely. These measures create a surreal situation where tourists gamble freely, while locals face significant barriers to accessing entertainment venues in their own country. Yet underground gambling thrives in creative ways. Illegal soccer betting syndicates operate through encrypted messaging apps, with transactions conducted in cryptocurrency to avoid detection. Mahjong games in private homes technically violate gambling laws when money changes hands, but enforcement focuses on commercial operations rather than friendly household games. Some expatriate communities organize private poker nights that exist in legal gray areas. The most fascinating aspect is how legal casinos coexist with strict anti-gambling measures. The same government that prohibits citizens from casual gambling simultaneously markets itself internationally as a luxury gaming destination. Casino workers, many of whom are locals, can work in gambling facilities but cannot participate as customers. This creates an economy where Singapore profits from vice tourism while protecting its own population from gambling addiction. A uniquely Singaporean solution to moral and economic contradictions. Fact number 7. Forbidden durian on public transport. The durian ban on Singapore's public transportation system highlights how seriously authorities take social harmony, even when dealing with beloved cultural foods. This spiky fruit, revered by locals as the king of fruits, produces an aroma so polarizing that it's treated like a biohazard in enclosed spaces. The penalty for bringing durian onto buses or trains is $500, and enforcement is surprisingly strict. The smell of durian is notoriously difficult to describe to those who haven't experienced it. Imagine a mixture of rotting onions, gym socks, and sweet custard concentrated to an almost overwhelming intensity. In tropical heat, the aroma intensifies and can linger in air-conditioned spaces for hours. What makes this ban particularly interesting is that durian is deeply embedded in local culture, with some varieties selling for hundreds of dollars per fruit. Durian season creates fascinating social dynamics. Families planning to purchase the fruit must arrange private transportation, as taxis often refuse durian-carrying passengers. Some apartment buildings have designated durian-eating areas on ground floors, while others ban consumption entirely in common areas. Hotels frequently post no durian policies, with violation fees that can exceed room rates. The enforcement relies heavily on smell detection rather than visual identification. Transit officers are trained to recognize durian aroma and can issue fines even when the fruit is wrapped or contained. This has led to an underground economy of specialized durian transport services and storage facilities near MRT stations where people can consume their purchases before heading home. The fruit that represents Southeast Asian culinary culture has become contraband on public transport, creating one of the world's most unusual food-related laws. Fact number 6. Police and PDA, love with limits public displays of affection in Singapore, exists in a fascinating legal and social gray area where cultural conservatism meets multicultural reality. While not explicitly illegal, excessive PDA can result in charges under public nuisance or indecent behavior laws, with penalties reaching $2,000 and potential jail time. The enforcement depends heavily on context, location, and the subjective judgment of officers or complainants. What constitutes acceptable affection varies dramatically across Singapore's diverse communities and neighborhoods. Hand-holding and brief kisses generally pass without comment in tourist areas like Orchard Road, but the same behavior might attract unwanted attention in more conservative residential districts. Couples have reported receiving warnings for extended embracing in public parks, while others engage in similar behavior without consequences. The enforcement mechanism relies heavily on public complaints rather than proactive policing. This creates an interesting social dynamic where acceptable PDA becomes defined by community tolerance rather than written law. Conservative residents might report couples for behavior that wouldn't merit a second glance in more liberal neighborhoods, leading to uneven enforcement across the island. Young couples have adapted by developing subtle PDA strategies, brief touches, coded gestures, and intimate conversations that maintain emotional connection while avoiding social judgment. Some popular dating spots have become known for their PDA tolerance, while others carry unspoken behavioral expectations. The result is a dating culture that is simultaneously more reserved and more creative than in countries with clearer guidelines. Love finds a way, but it does so while carefully reading the room and respecting invisible social boundaries that change based on location, time, and audience. Fact number 5. The price of being too noisy. Singapore's noise regulations create one of the world's quietest urban environments, enforced through fines that can reach $5,000 for residential disturbances. The acceptable noise levels are precisely defined. Construction work is prohibited after 6 p.m. on weekdays and all day. Sunday musical instruments cannot be played in apartments after 10:30 p.m., and even loud conversations in void decks can result in police intervention. The enforcement system combines technology with community reporting. Sound level meters determine objective violation thresholds, while neighborhood police regularly patrol residential areas during evening hours. The government has installed noise monitoring devices in some districts that automatically detect and record violations, creating an evidence trail for prosecutions. Repeat offenders face escalating penalties, including potential imprisonment for the most serious cases. These regulations have shaped architectural and lifestyle choices in unexpected ways. Apartment buildings incorporate additional soundproofing beyond standard construction requirements. Musicians often rent practice spaces rather than play at home, creating a thriving industry of rehearsal studios. Some residential complexes designate specific hours and areas for children's play, treating normal childhood activities as potential noise violations requiring management. The psychological impact creates neighborhoods that feel almost eerily quiet compared to other major cities. Conversations automatically lower in volume after dark. Parties end earlier, and spontaneous gatherings become carefully planned events. Some residents report feeling culture shock when traveling to louder cities, having become accustomed to Singapore's regulated tranquility. The policy has successfully created peaceful residential environments, but at the cost of some spontaneous community life and cultural expression. Fact number 4. Festivals that break all the rules. Singapore's religious and cultural festivals create fascinating temporary suspensions of the city-state's usual rigid regulations, revealing how authorities balance cultural respect with social control. During Thaipasam, Hindu devotees carry kavadi, elaborate offerings, while pierced with hooks and skewers, practices that would normally violate public safety regulations. The same government that bans chewing gum temporarily allows behavior that appears to violate numerous health codes. Chinese New Year brings controlled chaos to usually orderly streets. Lion dance performances create noise levels that would normally result in fines, while firecrackers, typically banned as dangerous explosives, receive special permits for temple celebrations. The contrasts are striking. A country that regulates every aspect of daily life suddenly encourages activities that seem to contradict its core principles of order and safety. Hari Raya celebrations transform void decks into community gathering spaces where normal noise restrictions are relaxed. Families cook elaborate meals in common areas, children play loudly until late hours, and music systems operate well beyond typical curfews. The temporary nature of these permissions creates anticipation and community bonding that might not exist if such activities were always permitted. What makes this particularly fascinating is how strictly temporary these exceptions remain. At precisely designated times, normal regulations resume with full force. The transition creates almost theatrical moments where communities quickly dismantle celebration setups and return to regulated behavior. These festivals serve as pressure release valves in an otherwise tightly controlled society, allowing cultural expression while demonstrating that exceptions exist only within carefully defined boundaries. The message is clear. Singapore respects cultural traditions, but only when properly scheduled and officially sanctioned. Fact number 3. The billionaire Garden City Singapore's transformation into a garden city represents one of the world's most expensive urban planning projects, where environmental regulations carry the same enforcement weight as traffic laws. The Skyrise Greenery Incentive Scheme requires new buildings to incorporate specific amounts of vegetation, with penalties for non-compliance reaching hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is an optional beautification. It has mandatory urban ecology with the full force of law behind it. The results are visually stunning and economically staggering. The Super Tree Grove at Gardens by the Bay cost $1 billion to construct, while the city's network of park connectors and nature reserves consumes land that could be worth tens of billions in real estate development. Changi Airport's indoor gardens and waterfall aren't just tourist attractions. They are expressions of national policy that prioritizes environmental aesthetics over pure economic efficiency. Private developers face increasingly complex green building requirements that add millions to construction costs. Rooftop gardens aren't suggestions, but legal obligations for many new developments. The Building and Construction Authority maintains detailed specifications for plant coverage, irrigation systems, and maintenance standards that rival safety codes in their complexity. Failure to maintain required vegetation can result in occupancy permit revocation. The economic impact extends beyond construction costs. Singapore imports specialized plants, employs thousands of urban horticulturists, and maintains climate-controlled growing facilities that consume enormous amounts of energy. The irony is palpable. A country that fines citizens for dropping banana peels spends billions creating artificial jungles in the sky. Yet the policy works. Singapore consistently ranks among the world's most livable cities, proving that extreme environmental regulation can coexist with rapid economic development, albeit at extraordinary cost. Fact number 2. The unwritten rules of locals beyond Singapore. As formal legal code exists an intricate system of unwritten social rules that locals navigate instinctively, but can confuse newcomers into inadvertent rule-breaking. Queue culture represents perhaps the most sacred of these informal laws. Cutting in line can provoke reactions ranging from loud, tutting to public confrontation, with social penalties sometimes exceeding official fines in their lasting impact. Hawker Center etiquette operates like an elaborate dance with unspoken choreography. Reserving seats with tissue packets is universally accepted, but the placement, timing, and duration follow complex unofficial protocols. Returning trays to designated areas isn't legally required, but failing to do so marks someone as inconsiderate or foreign. Table sharing with strangers follows intricate rules about eye contact, conversation initiation, and personal space that newcomers violate at their social peril. Elevator behavior reflects Singapore's obsession with efficiency, extended into social interaction. Standing on the left side of escalators, offering seats to elderly passengers, and maintaining appropriate queue distances aren't laws, but are enforced through collective social pressure that can feel more intimidating than official penalties. These rules vary by neighborhood, time of day, and demographic context in ways that take years to master. The most challenging aspect for outsiders is recognizing when unwritten rules override written ones. During peak hours, certain MRT behaviors become socially unacceptable, even when technically legal. Speaking loudly on phones, eating strongly scented foods, or playing music through speakers can provoke stronger negative reactions than many actual violations. Locals have internalized these social regulations so thoroughly that they often appear psychic in their ability to navigate complex public situations without conflict. Fact number 1. The paradise of order and punishment. Singapore's success story represents perhaps the world's most successful experiment in trading individual freedoms for collective prosperity and safety. The results speak for themselves. One of the world's highest GDP per capita figures, crime rates so low that children walk alone safely at night, and public services that operate with clockwork precision. The price of this paradise is constant surveillance, behavior modification through financial penalties, and social conformity enforced through both legal and cultural mechanisms. The economic benefits of extreme order are measurable and dramatic. Businesses operate with predictable efficiency when employees arrive on time, follow rules, and maintain professional behavior. Tourism thrives when visitors feel completely safe and encounter spotless environments. International corporations establish regional headquarters here, specifically because the regulatory environment, while strict, remains utterly predictable and consistently enforced. Yet the psychological costs are equally real, if harder to quantify. Creative expression operates within carefully defined boundaries. Spontaneous gatherings require official permissions, and personal behavior remains constantly subject to potential penalties. Some residents report feeling freedom primarily through travel, where suddenly simple activities like crossing streets become exercises in liberation rather than law-breaking risks. What makes Singapore unique isn't just the extent of its regulations, but how successfully it has convinced citizens that these restrictions serve their collective interests. The social contract is explicit. Surrender certain freedoms and receive safety, prosperity, and efficiency in return. The vast majority of residents consider this a worthwhile exchange, creating a society that functions more like a well-managed corporation than a traditional nation. Whether this model could work elsewhere remains debatable, but in Singapore's specific context, the paradise of punishment has created one of the world's most successful city-states. Singapore's paradox continues to fascinate and confuse visitors who expected either a sterile police state or a typical Southeast Asian experience. Instead, they find something entirely unique, a place where billion-dollar casinos coexist with chewing gum bans, where cutting-edge technology monitors jaywalking, and where cultural festivals temporarily suspend the very rules that define daily life. For travelers planning visits, the key survival strategy is simple. Assume everything has a rule, and that rule is actively enforced. Download transportation apps to locate legal crossing points, carry tissues for hawker centers, and remember that Singapore's definition of public disturbance might differ dramatically from your home country's tolerance levels. The $100 you save by ignoring a fine could eventually cost thousands in escalated penalties. But here's what most visitors discover. Following Singapore's rules isn't actually difficult once you understand the logic behind them. The city-state has optimized itself for efficiency, cleanliness, and safety in ways that become genuinely enjoyable once you adapt to the rhythm. The same regulations that seem oppressive initially create an environment where public transportation runs perfectly, streets feel completely safe at any hour, and social interactions follow predictable, respectful patterns. Singapore proves that extreme social control and individual prosperity can coexist, though whether you consider this paradise or punishment might depend on your personal tolerance for regulated freedom. One thing remains certain. Nowhere else on Earth offers quite this combination of strict order and surprising indulgence, creating a society that continues to challenge assumptions about the relationship between authority and happiness.